Today, we are diving into a story from ancient India that is just incredibly powerful. It's the legend of a king whose name has literally become another word for truth itself, King Harishchandra. His story is this extreme, almost brutal test of integrity, and it really pushes the limits of what a person can endure, all for the sake of a promise. So let's get into the tale that has defined truthfulness for generations.
You know this ancient saying, it just perfectly captures the whole vibe of our story. This isn't just some poetic line. It's basically a cultural benchmark for absolute, unshakable integrity. Think about it. It's saying that the sun and the moon, the very constants of our universe, are more likely to fail than Harishchandra is to break his word. That is the incredible standard we're dealing with today.
So who exactly was this king? Well, Harishchandra was a ruler from the super-famous Suryavanshi dynasty. Yep, the same solar dynasty that Lord Rama would later come from. He was the king of Ayodhya, and he was known far and wide as the greatest living symbol of Satya, which means truth, and Dharma, which is all about the righteous duty that truth demands.
Okay, so let's get to know the key players in this drama. Beyond his famous lineage, it's really his wife, Queen Taramati, and his son, Rohitashva, who are absolutely central to his story. And you have to understand, they aren't just background characters here. Their fate becomes tragically, completely tangled up in the king's promise.
So how does this whole epic saga even start? Well, it all kicks off with a debate up in the heavens, in the court of the gods. And the question was pretty simple. Who is the most truthful person alive? The great sage Vashishta immediately named King Harishchandra. But another sage, the famously fiery Vishwamitra, he wasn't so convinced. He decided he was going to put that claim to the ultimate test.
And this is how he does it. It's a brilliant, cruel setup. First, Vishwamitra appears in Harishchandra's dream. And in that dream, the king pledges his entire kingdom. So the very next morning, who shows up in court? Vishwamitra. And Harishchandra, believing a promise is a promise, even one made in a dream, hands over everything. But just when you think the sacrifice is complete, Vishwamitra springs his trap. He demands a dakshina, a kind of ritual payment to seal the donation. And of course, Harishchandra, having just given away everything, has absolutely nothing left to give.
To pay this final debt, Harishchandra gets 1 month. Now that he has no kingdom, he, his wife, and his son travel to the holy city of Kashi, what we know as Varanasi. Back then, it was considered a place outside of any earthly kingdom's rule. And there, stripped of all his royalty, he has to somehow earn this money. This is where his world really truly begins to fall apart.
To raise the money, Harishchandra makes a choice that is just unimaginable. He takes his own wife, Queen Taramati, to the marketplace and sells her into servitude to a Brahmin. That's the first piece of his heart, just torn away, all for the price of his word.
And just when you think it can't possibly get any worse, it does. His young son, Rohitashva, crying and clinging to his mother, is sold right along with her. The family is completely shattered. The king has now lost his kingdom, his wife, and his child.
But even selling his wife and son, it's still not enough to pay the dakshina. So Harishchandra sells the very last thing he has left in this world, himself. He becomes the property of a dom, the master of a cremation ground, a king, now a slave.
Now, to really grasp how far he's fallen, you have to understand this role. The Dom, or Chandala, was in charge of cremations, a duty that was considered very low in the social hierarchy. Harishchandra's new job was to collect a tax from mourning families before they could even light the funeral pyre. It's impossible to overstate the fall, from the throne of Ayodhya to this.
And right when you think his suffering has hit its absolute limit, that there's nowhere lower to go, Vishwamitra's test delivers its final, most devastating blow. Working day and night at this cremation ground, Harishchandra is about to face a tragedy that's going to pit his sworn duty directly against his own heart.
While out picking flowers, his son Rohitashva is bitten by a snake, and he dies. His poor, distraught wife carries their son's body to the only cremation ground in the city, which of course is the very one where Harishchandra now works. It's dark. His form is so changed by hardship she doesn't even recognize him. But he recognizes her, and he recognizes the small body she's carrying in her arms.
In that moment, he's just torn apart by this impossible conflict. On one side, you have the heart of a grieving father, a man who wants nothing more than to comfort his wife. But on the other, you have the duty of a servant, bound by his promise to his master to collect that cremation tax from everyone, no exceptions.
And so,
With his own heart completely breaking, he looks at his wife, standing there over the body of their dead son, and he speaks these words. He demands the tax. He just cannot break his promise, not even for this.
Taramati has nothing. I mean, literally nothing. No money, no jewelry, no possessions. So Harishchandra, sticking to his duty, tells her the only form of payment he can possibly accept is a piece of her own sari, the very last shred of dignity she has left in the entire world.
And as Taramati, in her utter despair, moves to tear her sari to pay the tax for her own son's cremation, the sky just lights up. The test, at its most cruel, most agonizing point, is finally over.
Sage Vishwamitra appears, and with him, the gods themselves. He stops Harishchandra and declares that he has passed a test that no mortal has ever endured. His commitment to truth, even when facing this unimaginable suffering, has been proven absolute. He is the most truthful being in all of creation.
And the restoration is just as fast as his fall was brutal. In an instant, everything is reversed. First, the gods use divine nectar, Amrit, to bring his son Rohitashva back to life. Then, a humbled Vishwamitra returns his kingdom, all his wealth, and all his honor. His ultimate sacrifice was not in vain. You see, ultimately, this entire story is a deep dive into one single concept, Satya. And it's not just about not telling lies. It's a much more profound principle. It's about aligning your thoughts, your words, and your actions with reality, and with cosmic law. For Harishchandra, upholding Satya was the same as upholding the entire universe itself.
Look, the story of Harishchandra is extreme, it's a mythological benchmark for sure, but it leaves all of us with a really powerful question that still hits home today. In our own lives, which are so full of small and large compromises, it forces us to ask ourselves, what is our unshakable truth? What principle are we willing to defend no matter what it costs?